Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Gaslit Truth Podcast. I am your host, Therapist Jen, here with my co-host,
Dr. Tara Lynn.
Dr. T. Dr. T.
Right here.
Mrs.
With
T.
really
All
good
right.
hair today. My hair is amazing.
She does have good hair. Let's do this whole hair talk. I know you did. So I hope your camera doesn't go fuzzy on us today.
Me too. Everybody should look at it at YouTube.
Everybody
It's
that's
great.
on YouTube, get your ass. If you're not on YouTube, get your ass on YouTube. And you subscribe to the Gaslit Truth Podcast, and you can see Terry's hair today, which is very nice. I was going for this like braid thing today. I don't know what's going on with that, but this is what's happening. So we are here today. We're not talking about hair. We are talking about a special guest that we have brought onto our podcast today. And before we introduce our guest, Terry and I just want to remind everybody that the fans are the heartbeat of the Gaslit Truth Podcast. We can't do it without you guys. We are a mom and pop startup. We are two chicks that are super passionate about how we are gaslit in multiple things in this world. And so we couldn't be doing this without you guys. And so if you can like, and you can subscribe and you can share us with your friends, I mean, please do that. We are on all the socials. You can hit us on the Facebook and on the Instagram and on the YouTuber and all these things, right? And then even if you wanted to, you can DM us, send us a message, or we also have an email, a good old traditional email at thegaslittruthpodcast@gmail.com. But please give us your feedback and give us your support. Go ahead, click those stars. Tell us what you think. We don't want bad feedback because life's too short for that kind of shit. So give us the good
bad
stuff.
feedback. I don't know.
We actually, if you give us
some
bad controversial feedback, damn straight we're going to use it.
Exactly.
We're going to talk about it and get curious about it. So without further ado, I am going to pass this over to Dr. T so she can introduce our guest today.
All right. So we have a special guest, and she is a consumer advocate. Her name is Malissa Pistillo. And I should have asked, did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. I even said before, I'm like, Jen, I need to ask how to pronounce her name exactly, and I didn't.
And then you forgot.
Yes. All right, I'm going to introduce you here. Malissa Pistillo is a benzo. Whoops, my mic is doing that thing again. Is a benzo and psych drug awareness advocate and works in cloud computing and cybersecurity as her day job. Malissa has experience with SSRI, SNRI, and benzodiazepine protracted injury and is still currently healing from benzo injury, formerly known as BIND bind. Malissa is currently working on a book, yay, that talks through her experience with psych drugs and how they nearly killed her and her journey to healing herself. The book is expected to be published at the end of 2025 or early 2026, and I'll probably be one of your first purchases, just so you know. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So when I saw you on TikTok originally, quite some time ago, I thought it was just benzo withdrawal. So until I read your intro, I did not realize like you've been on all the classifications of psych meds, basically. And that started the whole thing. So I think today, what I would like to get out of today is just your story, your legitimate story. How did all of this start for you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, my journey started back in 2018. At that point, I was a Muay Thai boxer. I was an amateur boxer. Best shape of my life, probably in those photos you could maybe see. Best shape, health. I had never experienced any mental health issues, depression, panic attacks. I hardly knew what anxiety was. I mean, I was someone skydived, bungee jumped, flip quads. Like I was the face of not anxiety, right? So that was my history before that moment in time. And in 2018, couple months after my wedding, I had suffered a traumatic brain injury, a concussion. And 4 months into my concussion, I actually started doing a lot better. And under the agreement of my doctor, I had decided to start a new job. Well, at that point, I had started a new job. And I think the stress of the job had actually caused some type of relapse, a vestibular relapse. So I started to see distortion. And so I didn't know what was happening. I didn't really understand setbacks. I didn't really understand the brain injury. I was so uneducated what was happening to me that it just put me into a full fight or flight response. Like I went into a full sympathetic response, and which I did not understand the nervous system at that point. And I stopped sleeping. So I had no insomnia for the first 4 months of my brain injury. So clearly it's not associated to that. But I go to my neurologist and tell her what's going on. And instead of educating me on, Melissa, this is what's happening, this is how the nervous system works, like education would have been efficient there. However, she decided to prescribe me an SSRI, Lexapro, and an SNRI, trazodone. Again, I was an athlete as well. So my serotonin is out of the roof, right? Like that is not a place I have troubles with. But when you go through a brain injury and you have no history with the medical system, you don't really know what to do. We just know, okay, at this point, just trust the doctor. I don't understand the brain injury. I'm just like, I have no other choice than to trust this doctor. I'm just going to do it. So I take those two drugs together. Okay. And within a couple weeks, I start experiencing severe anxiety. And when I say severe anxiety, I mean, imagine Eminem in your mind spitting 120 miles an hour. Like this is how fast this is happening. And I could not understand what was happening. I started having chemical depression. So it almost felt like someone clicked a button on me. Again, I have no history of depression. So it's like someone came, clicked a button, and boom, depression was on. And that's as fast as it would go. I started developing OCD symptoms, and I started developing serotonin poisoning.
I was going to say, did you have serotonin syndrome? Like that was the first thing that went to my head. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm also having heart failure. So I developed POTS. I'm starting to have heart failure. And I go to my doctor, that same doctor that prescribed that day on the relapse, that same day she told me, go find another doctor. That is what she told me. So I left that doctor's office with 2 psych drugs. She told me to go find a TBI specialist because she didn't know what to do with me. I'm sitting there crying because I don't know what's happening. I haven't slept in days. I don't know what's happening. And she told me to go find a new doctor. So now
she abandoned you. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I go find this new doctor, part of one of the best rehabs in New York City. I'm thinking I'm in great hands, right? And he saw me. Now I'm 2 weeks onto these drugs, and that's when he started to see me. But I started to have symptoms 3rd, 4th week, 5th, 6th, right? So he has seen me already at this point, not having these impacts. And I go to him and I come in. And the day that I had that doctor's appointment with him was the day I started fainting in the shower. I woke up that morning and I could literally hear the ants crawling on the floor. That's how sensitive I was. I felt like I was just being poisoned throughout my body. So when I got to his office, and I told him like, hey, I fainted this morning. This is what's going on. His first question to me was, have you ever fainted before? And I go, well, a decade ago when I lived in Cyprus and I put a nose like I was taking out my nose piercing and I passed out then.
Yep.
And immediately he says, pre-existing condition, and writes it on his notes. I kid you not.
Hasn't everyone fainted a time or two in their life? I mean,
do you believe that? And first off, fainting and me feeling like I'm being poisoned to death, psychosis, OCD, anxiety. I'm sorry. This is a cluster of symptoms that never existed in Melissa. So he continued on the conversation, and I'm so weak. I mean, I'm going through serotonin poisoning. I have no idea what is happening to me. I could hardly speak. So I can't fight this man. At the end of that appointment, the nurse came in and did my vitals. So she's used to doing it in the beginning. In this case, she did it at the end. When they test my vitals, yeah, my heart rate was 39. I mean, 39, 40 is what my heart rate was. And they're like, we can't let you leave, Melissa. She gets the doctor. He comes back into the room. And he goes, what's going on? And I'm like, what's this? Did I not just tell you what was going on? And he goes,
like, I hope you guys knew, because that's why I'm here.
I mean, weren't you listening?
Yeah, weren't you
Pre-existing
listening?
condition.
Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know what the first thing he says to me was, did you eat breakfast?
Oh,
that was his comment to me. Did you eat breakfast? And I looked at him and I'm like, I don't eat breakfast ever. And that's not what's going on. Then the second comment was, oh my God, I think you have serotonin poisoning. And so
at least we got there.
We got there, but he failed to realize he's the one that needs to adjust my meds, not the hospital that he continued to tell me, go to the hospital, Melissa, if this happens again, is his words. Serotonin syndrome doesn't work like that. Like if you have serotonin syndrome, you have serotonin syndrome. This is going to be the next day, then the following day, and so on, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not acute. You don't go there for a Band-Aid or a stitch. It's a chronic condition. Yeah.
Exactly. And also, it's not the hospital. The hospital's not going to tell me to taper off my drug. They're not going to
Correct.
educate me.
Right.
They're not, that's not their role. Their role is to keep you alive. And so,
Mhm.
but when I ended up in the hospital many times because I didn't know where else to go at this point. And every single doctor in the hospital was like, Melissa, these drugs don't cause these symptoms outside the fact it's highlighted on the drug insert. Like this is, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to read the drug insert, which at that time I'm guilty of not doing. As a patient, you trust this doctor, right? So
Yeah.
our society has taught us to trust these doctors. So,
But hold on. I also
Yes.
want to say, when you're in your most vulnerable time, reading a leaflet, like when you can barely function and you're supposed to read a scientific leaflet, and understand it for yourself is quite challenging,
Right.
if not impossible. You know.
100%, right?
Mhm.
I cannot agree with you more. And I try to take as much accountability as possible, but a doctor's lack of education is a whole different topic. Like I try to take my part in it, but a doctor's lack of education is a whole two different topic. These are two different topics.
They are, and you have touched on what informed consent is in your videos, and like that's exactly what is supposed to be happening, right? If you are going to be able to prescribe, you need to also be able to talk about those risks and the benefits and the alternatives, right? And so
100%.
to tell a patient to go read and review a leaflet, I've actually gotten into like this with people on TikTok before who have said to me, where's your responsibility?
Yes.
And just recently this just happened. And I said, there is actually a much more heightened level of responsibility that is not on the patient, but on the doctor to assess, here's where my patient is at right now.
Actually a legal and ethical
It
responsibility.
actually is, right? Like, and so it's such an asinine statement. So when you just said responsibility, I'm like, yes, there's a responsibility that you have, but your responsibility is to yourself, and you did what you needed to do, which was to get yourself to the experts.
Correct.
You are asking for help.
Mhm.
So, okay.
What is Hippocratic Oath? What is the Hippocratic Oath that was taken?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
do we forget that oath to do no harm?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's very interesting to me because I was just at the doctor's office last week or something, and they have the little signature pad right there, right? That just the little signature pad that you sign, and they're like, "Well, this is just for this," and they do this brief summary of like responsibility and whatever. Do you want to see it? Do you want to see the pamphlet, or just sign here? And I'm like, what am I really signing? Actually, I'm really signing what? Like, just to get in to see the doctor, I have to sign my name 3 times on this thing, and you give me a brief synopsis. I bet you that thing is this long or
So
pages
did you
long that I'm
let's
signing,
get it. What did it
you
say?
know? And I'm sure
Study
you
it.
should go get it. I should go
You
get it.
should go get it.
I would like that now. I would like that now. I wanna see it now. But I'm sure there's risks and all that stuff in what you're signing, and you don't even realize it, so they can say, "Well, she signed it." You
Correct.
know?
Yeah.
She signed it. So we did our due diligence here, you know?
Well, this
So
is what makes medical malpractice lawsuits so difficult. When right, like this is
Right.
we are seeing them. People are winning. I am seeing people win. We
Good.
have EGG scans. We have the drug inserts, the FDA black box warning, and we do have psychiatric experts that are now finally speaking up. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but that's a very small percentage.
But it's a step in the right direction,
Yeah.
you know?
Totally.
And well, so I just did a video because we went on that, or I went on and Jen did too, but I followed through to the bitter, bitter end
She did. I
of
was not gonna put my credit card information in. Terry did.
I did. I went to hers website to see just how easy it was to get prescribed psychiatric medication. And literally it was a checklist, which was the PHQ-9. That was it, checklist. And then I got an email that said, oh, and it asked me what med I wanted to be on. And I said, there's a huge list, like checkbox licks in it. I was like, I'm going to pick one that I know is really hard to get off of. Lexapro is one that I picked, or I was going to pick Effexor, but because that's hard too. Anyway, so I picked Lexapro, and I got an email in 12 hours from the prescriber. That's it. No other interactions. It says, congratulations, we've prescribed you. Lexapro. If you have any, unaliving thoughts, here's the number for you to call. Otherwise, we will check in on you in 4 weeks to see how it's going. And this is all, then there's like a text thing that you can do. And then I said, well, okay, what I want to know is, how do I get off of this? And how do I know when I'm ready to get off of this? Like, I didn't want to be on it. But anyway, how do I know when I'm ready to get off of it? And it said, that's all in your treatment plan. Click here. So I clicked there. And in the treatment plan was nothing. It said, do not go cold turkey, contact your prescriber. And I was like, that was helpful. That was super helpful, And I'm like, so this is how easy. And it makes me wonder. And there's also a spot in their little app that you could go in and request an increase of dose.
Yeah.
Like, I want more, and I'm like.
So that would have been mailed. If you would have followed through to the end of it, you would have had a dose of Lexapro showing up in your mail.
Yeah. Like, literally, it was in progress. And I said, I want to cancel my order. I don't want to take this. And they said, okay. Thankfully, I was shocked. They did say, okay. And they canceled the whole thing and they refunded my credit card. So, but yeah, I would have got a 3-month supply. Like,
just like that.
Just like that. Yeah.
That is so devastating. I don't even know where to begin on that.
Yeah.
This is the world we live in now.
When you're ever ready to look that up, it's super disheartening when you start to go through the process, even online. I was doing the same thing with Terry. The same time we're texting each other, and I'm like, okay, let's get on the Hims and Hers websites and see if we can both get prescriptions.
This is real.
Mailed to our house, because we didn't know that this really truly was a thing here in the States. And it was actually Dr. Yosef on TikTok who introduced me to this, and I called her and I'd like, you got to check it out. And before we knew it, we were both prescribed Lexapro, and it would have just been sent to the house. So it's a crazy thing that we have also now removed the ability to even put eyes on people. But what's very interesting is that even when eyes are on people, there is still a ridiculous amount of malpractice that's occurring. So that's the thing that I kind of get curious about. It's like both sides to the coin, right? Because in your case, even right, in the case of even myself, there was definitely some malpractice in myself as well. And I'm 22 years on Lexapro trying to get off of it. Okay. We were seen face to face. We did have appointments, multiple providers involved. In your case, there was even significant medical events that were occurring. So you had everybody from the psychs to the neurologists to all, and yet that it took how long, right, before it was recognized as first as serotonin syndrome and what was happening to you, right? And you paused your story right there. So I'm curious to know then, after those pieces fell into play, then what was next for you, Melissa? Like, what was the next piece then?
So at that point, now, hospitals telling me this is me. And I'm like, when you're altered by the drugs, you start to believe it. Then there's the debate. There's this dichotomy between what your gut is saying and then your mind, right? Society tells us we're so used to believing what we hear with our mind, but my gut was telling me from day one, there was something wrong with these drugs. Like, fully, if I had just listened to my gut, right? But at that point, because my doctor, for the brain injury, is not listening to me. He's not suggesting to come off. He's not trying to offer me suggestions. I go find I explained to him, I'm going to find a psychiatrist that understands these drugs well. Yep. And I went to a very well-known institution in New York, and which I paid $500 for each session. And she went on to continue to convince me, Melissa, what you're explaining are mental health conditions. And my advice is that you increase the dose.
I knew that was coming. I
was waiting for increase or let's add this, because you're polypharmacy on crack right now. So I was waiting for that. Okay, so increase the dose.
The first 2 appointments I rejected, and I kept coming in. I mean, I'm full blown passing out. I'm passing out in the shower. I'm passing out on the street. My husband's taking me to the I mean, this is literally what my life is. And I'm trying to manage a job from home. Thankfully, I was able to work from home. But so the third appointment, I walked in and I just kind of surrendered. I was like, okay, maybe she's right. Nothing is helping me. I was told you can't, you need to give these drugs 6 weeks. I'm over that period by now.
Give it time. Give it time.
Give it time, right?
It
this
takes
is what
a while.
they say. They're like, you have to stay on, Melissa.
Yeah.
And so I listened to her, and I had increased the dose of Lexapro.
Wow, you're familiar with Lexapro. Yeah, there we go.
And so, yeah, that didn't go so well. So
Yeah.
long story short, to get me to the benzos is that didn't go well. Symptoms only increased, and it's like I'm still having insomnia issues. I went on these drugs for insomnia, yet I'm still not sleeping. And so I decide to go start the CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia protocol, which is a super effective protocol. And that doctor that was doing it told me you cannot come off the drugs while you're doing this protocol. So I stuck out with serotonin poisoning.
Wait, why?
Because coming off these drugs do affect insomnia, and their whole point is that they need to prove that the protocol works. So it's about
they
them
need to have the evidence
that
this is successful.
Oh,
so if you tweak anything about you,
correct,
they're not going to have that evidence.
Yeah,
That's
too many variables. There's some confounding variables in there. If you decide to change something with yourself, then we know that what we've added on is not working.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Fine. I continued dying through this protocol. I mean, I remember staying up till like 2:00 in the morning as part of this protocol, literally hallucinating. I thought my apartment was on fire at this point between the drugs, insomnia, following this protocol. But the protocol was super effective. Like that should be the frontline treatment for insomnia and diet. Like this is what we should be looking at. But anyway, finished the protocol. And then I chose on my own to start tapering the drug. I had informed, at this point, I gave up on the psychiatrist. I'm like, there's something wrong. You're a dud. Like we need to move on back to the other dud. That's at least
dud A and dud B. Here
exactly.
we go.
And so he did help me. He questioned why I wanted to come off. And I'm like, you're delusional. There is something wrong. So I start tapering. It took me 6 months in total to come off both the drugs. I started with Lexapro and then Trazodone. And you have to keep in mind, I was on these drugs for 6 months in total. And now I'm tapering 6 months. Okay. And as I got to that last pill, things were doing much better. Did I struggle through those 6 months? Absolutely. Like psychosis, OCD. I mean, if I touched the window, I was not sleeping. I mean, if you look back at the person I was before this moment in time, these are two different people.
I just can't hold on. I just cannot believe you're only, I shouldn't use the word only. I don't know what else to use on these medications for 6 months and it caused this amount of damage. Like,
yeah,
that is, to me, that is crazy. That is mind blowing. Like I can't, most people, talk about it after years and years and things like that. But this is a 6-month time frame.
Yeah.
And during that time frame, you were made to believe that you were crazy.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Because you weren't on enough of them. Right?
Correct. It's a paradox. I was having a paradoxical reaction, right? Like there are definitely a group of people that have these symptoms start when they come on. They kind of stick through and sometimes it gets better or not. I happen to fall under that group that was like hardcore symptoms, and the medical system continued to convince me it was me, even though none of these
Gaslit
symptoms
Truth,
existed.
isn't it?
I mean, that is the, and you actually used in your, before people come on the show, we asked them to just give us a little bit of information, and one of the words you used in there was being gaslit by the providers into thinking things that were not true and not real. I love that you said, I had to write this down because I'm like, this is going on a deliverable. I just said, okay, I said the dichotomy between the gut and the mind, where your gut is telling you something isn't right. I know something isn't right. I'm putting all of my eggs into something, right? But our mind and what we are given information wise, right? That's fed to us is very one-sided. And you kind of just like, you fall into, it's like you're so desperate that it's like, I need to believe, I need to put faith and trust into the people that are the experts. I need to just kind of bow down to that because you get so fucking tired.
Correct.
And it's like you can't fight anymore. And so you're in such a low space. So when you're not given informed consent, even in a low space, by the way, people can still understand risks and benefits and like other options. They truly can. But in that space, you kind of just fall to, okay, I'm going to just surrender. My gut might be telling me something else, but it puts you in a really compromised position. So that dichotomy between the gut and the mind, I think that is such a
Well, that's
powerful,
that whole gaslit thing. Like,
yes, it's such a
when you
powerful statement.
We
when
know
what
we're
you
being
know to
gaslit.
be, yes,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you know your truth,
Correct.
and gosh, my microphone, I'm so sorry. When you know your truth, but someone else is telling you that that's not the truth,
Right.
and it's like, but it is for me. It does feel like it's the truth for me. But then you're like, well, maybe it's not. You question your truth, right? Like, yeah, I am pretty sick right now. So maybe I should just, follow along and follow in line.
I've got a video. If you're okay with me showing this, Melissa, I've got a couple videos, and we'll see how well it works here for those of you that are on YouTube and you're able to watch this. Some of these have some words to them and some don't. So Melissa, we can have you talk a little bit about what I'm showing.
Sure.
And I'm going to start with one of them. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to jump into it, and then we'll come back out here. So these are off of your TikTok. You have put these out on social, and what's crazy to me is it took me a while of following you, Melissa. After I started reading your stuff, I was telling Terry this before we started. I didn't realize that the person in your videos was you. And if people have not followed Melissa on TikTok yet, her picture that she represents herself of, on TikTok is two faces. And it's the face of you currently, or more currently and recently, and it's your face split in half, and the face of you years ago before all of this injury.
Well, not even that long ago. How long ago was it?
Well, a little more than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
5. I mean, that's not that long. Right.
It's crazy. So if you haven't checked that out, you have to check that out too. And we will obviously link all of the information in the show notes. But I want to bring this up and show this one. I have two of them here. I'm going to show the first one.
Love within, blowing desire, skin to skin.
Okay. I know the first one might be a little hard to see because it was very large, but can you talk about those two videos of you, Melissa, and what you were showing the world?
Yeah, for sure. So in those videos, that was my life before psych drugs, and that's my life specifically after benzodiazepines. So after I got off the SSRIs, 9 months later, I was put on benzos due to protraction withdrawal, which I was not educated about. I was on benzos for a total of 6 months. I was having interdose intolerance, was put on, was going through interdose intolerance. My doctor suggested ketamine, and ketamine and benzos is what led me to oversedation and having to jump off the benzo 50%. And then I tapered 7 months. I have been left with a severe brain injury, a synthetic brain injury due to neuroadaptation, due to the drugs. And in those videos, my intention is to show what my life looked like after. Those videos are 2 years after. After I jumped off of the drug, I was 98% disabled. The only thing I had access to was my hands and my forearms. I experienced over 200 symptoms simultaneously. I was bedridden. My husband had to feed me for the first 6 months. And I still don't walk more than 15, 20 minutes a day. So these videos are to show what my life looked like. And I didn't look exactly like that after the SSRIs. I also had physical impact to my body because of them. But there is a huge difference what benzos had done to my body.
I would argue that it was probably an accumulation of both things, and everything that your body went through from the beginning of this whole thing.
Yeah.
That
And
it,
the brain. I mean, really,
and the brain, yeah, all of it. And it's funny
truly.
because
I mean,
I was reading some of your comments on your TikToks, and some people just suck, guys. Like, I'm gonna say, some people really are not kind. That's not you. This is, all this stuff, and I'm like, well, if you don't believe a story, just say I don't believe your story. You know what I mean? Like, But that doesn't mean that it's not your story just because someone else, just because you can't wrap your mind around the damage that this causes. And
Yes.
I get the same thing on my TikToks, like, these drugs save lives, they save lives and all this stuff. And I'm like, they also take lives. And and it doesn't even have to be a life that's taken, by death, but your life was stripped from you, your life as you knew it is probably never going to be the same. Melissa, as you knew her, in good ways and bad ways, probably too. Like Melissa will never be the same because she knows too much now. Like she knows way too much now. But she also has lots of struggles to continue to heal and work through, I would imagine, from this small amount of time on these big medications, that were prescribed relatively, in my opinion, flippantly. There's after I went through this whole thing with the online, prescription and all that stuff, I'm like, for a field that wants to be so damn scientific, right? Like the prescribing is anything but scientific.
Correct.
And I'm like, I feel like there needs to be a gap that's bridged there, or just, let's just scrap this whole thing and start from the bottom again, like let's forget about all these psych meds for a hot second. And when you said you were 98% disabled, like it makes me think about the rates of disability going up in this country due to mental health problems. And the majority of people who are disabled in this country due to mental health problems, you can't just go to disability and say, I have mental health problems. You have to have meds. You have to have psychiatrists. You have to have like you are.
You've got to give away your firstborn child to
exactly.
To have that
like
stamp.
you are going through it. You can't just be like, so I'm a little depressed and I think I need some help with disability. Are you on meds? No. And I've never been to therapy and I've never done these. That's not going to happen, you guys. Like it is people that are med stacked. It is people that have been through the system and have been failed by the system. And that's where they're here. It's people that have trusted the system, I guess, on levels. And I'm not saying every person within the mental health system is untrustworthy, because I think you can find some, but the more and more people that I talk to, the more weary I am, so I don't know. It's so hard, especially when I think about the disabled factor in there and the rates of disability, even though the rates of prescribing is sky high, like so many people are on prescriptions and the rates of disability are just as high. And I'm like, does nobody see the problem here?
Correlate it?
Yes, exactly. Like I've said this before. I'm like, if psychiatric medication worked in the way that people want it to work, like we want it to work, depression, anxiety, ADHD, sleep problems would be eradicated. But instead, they are through the roof. They're skyrocketed, and I think worsened often for the majority of people who are taking things, so anyway, that's my soapbox.
Look at our nursing homes. I can guarantee you most of the people in our nursing homes
started in the nursing home
between statins and benzodiazepines that cause pseudo dementia. I mean, it is so devastating to see the reality. I mean, what, 1 in 3 are on psych drugs? The fact that doctors oh, my computer just went. Hopefully you can still see me.
I can. We can still see and hear you. You're good. Yep.
Yeah, great. Like there's a lack of understanding about how the brain works. Like there's a lack of understanding around neuroadaptation, that nothing in the brain works in isolation. Like when you start to look and start doing the research, as you ladies have done as well, like you start to realize how obvious this is. It's like the writing is on the wall outside of it even being mentioned on the drug insert now. Like most of this protracted injury, syndromes, psychosis, suicide ideation, this is listed on the drug insert, which the doctors deny to your face unless you bring that to them and show it. Like, I don't understand how we got here.
Yeah, that's nuts. And I think even about marketing, right? So when they have those flowery things like, you might want to try this med or this med, do it, and it may cause death and all this, all underneath the do happy, visualizations and audio and all the stuff. But yet we still go, oh yes, I think I would like to try that. And so it's just a marketing machine is what it
I
is.
I want you, Melissa, can you talk about, you just touched on it when you were talking about the brain. So you put a video out there that I thought was just fantastic. And it was an instructional video. I actually sent it to Terry weeks
She goes,
back.
this sounds just like you. And I
And I
was
go, oh my
like,
God, it's you. It's me. It's us. And you had your whiteboard and you went through and you talked about the GABA receptor. You went into all of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is, for Terry and I, that speaks home to us because that's our we've built that into our practices. The neural health aspect of this, doing assessments of it, actually like offering, I mean, Terry and I do some amino acid work with people, and she was the pioneer of this for me. And of course, when I saw this happening, I jumped on board with it because I'm like, finally fucking something that isn't us talking about Freud and putting somebody in a chair staring at the ceiling and giving them meds. Like,
right.
something different, right? And you put this video out there and you had your pointer and I'm just listening. And her and I, we said to each other, we said, it's a silver lining, right? But it's a product of such devastating injury where somebody took knowledge into their own hands and can speak more about what is happening in her fucking brain than any neuroscientist,
Correct.
any scan that has ever been done, any psychiatrist, any medical doctor. And it was very empowering, Melissa.
Well, just the idea now, knowing your story and knowing that you're still in this healing process, that you were able to gain that type of knowledge is phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
Like how could you tap into that when you were so injured is beyond amazing to me. Yeah. But I think I said to Jen after she sent that, I said, yeah, to me, it's not that different than, a cancer patient or families of a cancer patient who now can speak cancer lingo, right? And beyond, because they're going through something. And I wish more consumers would get curious the way that you did and really dive in, because I think we don't do that in the mental health space. Like, well, I'm depressed, or well, I've got anxiety, and it stops there. Like, it stops there.
Melissa, you dove in to a holistic, non-traditional side of the brain. Like, that's the part that's really cool, because what you were showing are things that people, we're not educated on that.
Correct.
Consumers aren't educated on that. The providers aren't educated on that. And yet this is happening. And so I just,
wait,
I didn't know.
All those people are not educated on that. And Melissa happened to dig in, I'm going to guess, to research, to any
Not
resources. It's not hard
it's
to
like
find.
Right there. You Google.
Exactly. It's like hand delivered to you. So this is the mind blowing piece of all of this, is that it's right there. Prescribers, it's right there. All this information is at your fingertips. Now, you don't even have to go to the library like I did and have to put dimes in a copy machine to get it out of journals. Like, we don't have to do that anymore, guys.
Oh, that's okay.
And that's the crazy thing. It's like when in the case of benzos, right? We know that they work on the GABA receptor, but like the GABA receptor, this is a principal neurotransmitter in the brain and body, right? This is all through your gut, through your nervous system, through your brain. It's like, what do you think happens when you take a drug that causes oversedation in the brain, and then the neurons start to shut down? Like, this happens throughout the body. You want to know why I have 200 symptoms? Like, let's look at the other receptors. When I talk about this, because I go to the hospital often just for scans. Like, I tell them, you are no good to me. You're no more than good to me for the scan. That is it. I'm not here for your opinion. I'm not here to have a conversation.
Give me the scan, damn it. I got to go.
I mop the room with their body. These people hate me, and they have nothing. When you educate them, you know what they do? They shut down. Their balls drop to the floor. They walk out, and their nurses come in. I will never see them for the rest of and then when it's time to give me my feedback, they stand at the door and they look down, or they look at my husband. Yes.
They are so damn intimidated by you. Like, you are an empowered patient, and there's the shit out of them.
I never should have had to do all this research. I should have never had to go through this. But now I'm my greatest resource, and you can't convince me otherwise. But it's
and
so
you are a lot
obvious.
of followers in people's great resource as well. Like there's so many people that can learn from you as a consumer. Because I think the best part is that you're not a healthcare professional, right?
Correct.
Like you are a consumer who is
Correct.
extremely educated.
Yes.
I want to circle back on this idea that you said, your GABA receptors. People think that your neurotransmitters are just in your brain. I mean, they are. Your brain is connected to your whole body, everybody. Like your body loves homeostasis, your body
Correct.
loves balance. Like these neurotransmitters are everywhere. So when you put a pill in, it doesn't just go to the ones that are in your brain. Like it goes, it's not like, oh, not you. I'm not you, arm, not you, heart. I'm going to go to the brain. Straight to the brain. But it's like, no, you're going to go all the places. It's
Correct.
going to impact your entire body. And even when people talk about serotonin, like, well, it's all in the gut. It's made in the gut. I'm like, well, sure, but it's still everywhere else.
Correct.
Like, it's all the places, right? So, and medication is not heat-seeking missiles. And this isn't just psych med. This is all meds. Like my husband, I think I need a deliverable or merch for this. You can't get something for nothing, he always says. And I'm like, you're all the time. You can't get something for nothing. And I'm like, that is particularly true when it comes to psych medications. You can't get something for nothing. But as consumers, we're also led to believe these manipulative things like, well, if you want to feel mentally better, you're going to accept the side effects of, no libido, confusion, weight gain, akathisia. You're going to accept all of these things if you want to feel mentally better. And I'm like, well, all of that shit makes me feel mentally worse. So I don't
Correct.
understand this weird trade-off that we try to tell people, the manipulation. And that's what you're talking about is the manipulation, the gaslighting and manipulative language that you hear. Well, you need more, like
Correct.
You haven't
all
been
these
on it
things.
quite long enough.
You
Let's
haven't been
give it
on it
another
long
few more
enough,
weeks.
right?
You said that earlier, and I was like, oh
Oh,
God.
man.
If
We
I
need to
had a
just write a
dime
whole
for every
book
time
about
I
that.
heard that, right?
Manipulative language.
Can I
It
just
is.
say, like, doctors prescribe these drugs within a 15-minute appointment, but they don't realize that 15-minute appointment goes on to destroy generations of family. I haven't spoken to my family in years. I'm too busy fighting for my life and just trying to survive. My father and my siblings lost a daughter and a sibling. My husband hasn't spoken to his family because we're just focused on my healing.
You
We
are
have
in
to,
fight or flight here in your
yeah.
own little home. Yeah.
You're when we're talking about not being able to feed yourself and experiencing 200 symptoms, you're not worrying about what your dad's doing on the weekend. Let's just say that. You're
Right.
trying to survive. You're trying to figure out how to make money to pay for your insurance, for your mortgage, for your life insurance in case you commit suicide. Because that's the reality that I had to face. I had to face the reality that I need to make sure I somehow figure out how to work to pay for my insurance and my life insurance policies in case, because there was such a large probability that I wasn't going to make it. But I'm in my childbearing years. I'm losing those years. I may never have children because of a decision a doctor made in 15 minutes. They destroy generations of a family just like that.
Gosh.
I just want to pause. I don't even have any words after all that. That was so powerful, and so sad. And it just makes me wonder all the people that don't have voices out there, that are going through the same thing or get shut down by other people when they share their voices. So this is so important and powerful.
Melissa, have you experienced anybody that's close to you? And I'm not talking like in the online communities, right? People that you only know just virtually, but people that are close to you that it has really greatly changed the relationships that you have with them because of going through this, even like for the positive or for the negative. Are there family, friends that have?
I have lost all my friends through this journey. I have lost all of my family outside of my husband. My mother comes down from New York to Florida to help. That's the only time I'll talk to her. I don't communicate through messaging because yes, I come off really presentable, right? Like you ladies see this presentable person. You can't fathom the physical pain sitting up. I can only sit up for 2 hours max a day. Otherwise I'm bedridden. I have 5 cups of ice water to help regulate my temperature. I have an ice pack behind my back, pillows. I have this thing for my arm. You get to see this functional Melissa, but unfortunately that happened. Well, fortunate and fortunate. Again, I had to work through this journey. Like And so there's a part of this cognitive function that I happen to have more than others. And that was because we would have lost everything. I have 2 mortgages. I would have lost everything. So me worrying about my family back in New York, and I have a Greek family. My husband's a Greek family. These are big families, and we haven't spoken to anyone in over 3 years.
I want to say the two things can coexist, everybody. You can be debilitated and still, quote unquote, function and think.
Correct.
Like those two things can exist in the same moments. And I think we forget about that. And because all of this is not for us visible, like you're not wearing a cast or, something that we can see. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of judgment around, that, well, you can't be that bad because you're doing this podcast. Right. And so it was actually the first thing, I think you had said this in emails, like, hopefully I'll be okay that day. Right. So there was half of me that was like, if she cancels, it's because she's not okay. She's not well. And I also wanted to be mindful of that, having this conversation with you, because I know that you're still in your healing process. And I mean, to me, that's important. That's just as important in self-advocacy as finding the answers, right? Is having the ability to advocate for yourself when you're not well. So yeah, the two things to me can coexist in the same moments, so I want people to know that
both can be true. And I feel like they see this person, but it's like, why don't you ask me why my hair is in braids? I have such severe neuropathy that I have to distribute the weight of my hair. Otherwise it is excruciating pain, right? Like they see this functional person. I do a really good job of being able to put a smile on, right? I've had to do that to survive for work, and I'm able to do that now. But the benzos damage so much of your emotional regulation. You can see that I'm smiling throughout this conversation. I don't feel that inside. I'm still not able to feel positive emotion, but I'm able to do it on the outside to present myself as functional. Again, I have to try to manage a job. I need to bring some type of income. Do you know what I mean? Like it's part of survival. Both can be true.
Yeah, they both can be true. And I think you do a really good job on your TikTok of showing that other side.
Yes. That's the biggest piece to this, is people to actually see like
the vulnerable side.
Yes. It's very real. It's very raw. It's very vulnerable. I mean, and you do a great job of like some people might say she's showing these extremes, right? Here's her in this gorgeous wedding gown, right? And she's in these fancy magazines. And then here's a picture of her in a bed, okay, unable to move, covered in, you can see the packs, you can see the blankets over you, right? Or the one of your husband he's trying to feed you. And people will view that as like, this is so extreme. That extreme though is fucking your reality. Like I can't even there's, again, people are assholes online and they'll talk, they view it as such like a polarizing thing, but that polarizing piece is your life. Like that is true reality for you. And you show it. You show that vulnerability really in a very raw way, Melissa.
That I knew that my calling was to start speaking out. I mean, what communicates to me now is the universe, not anyone else. So it's me and the universe at this point. And I knew that it was part of my calling, and it was devastating to come to the point of having to show myself and show what my photos look like before. I knew no one was going to believe it. I knew that people couldn't comprehend. And those photos and videos of what my journey looks like now, that's at least a year after. I don't have any evidence of what that first year looked like.
And
it is devastating. It is devastating what I had endured, what any Benzo warrior endures. But I think at one point I was like, I need to show both. Regardless if I'm so embarrassed, I need to show both dichotomies. I need to show both worlds of my reality, despite if someone doesn't believe it. And that is why I named my channel The Face of MALpractice, right? Like it just suited my reality.
Yes.
I love that. Well, is there anything else you would like for people to know?
I think there's a few things. So I think, one, trust your gut and know that doctors do not have all the answers. Unfortunately, most doctors are uneducated. I would probably say 95% of doctors are uneducated realistically. And I think it's important to do your due diligence. You could go to Daily Med. It's just Google Daily Med. It's a government site to search your drug insert.
Yeah.
Take back reverence. We need to stop handing it to the man in the coat, because what happened to me is not odd. 50 to 80% of people will experience benzo withdrawal. 1 in 6 will be left with protracted injury, benzo injury. That is not a side effect. That is an effect of the drug. We need to stop mistaking the two. So it's take back reverence, do your due diligence. And there are other natural ways of healing: cognitive behavior therapy, cognitive processing therapy for PTSD, cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, somatic healing. There's so many, working with educated therapists. There's just so many other places. Doing a ketogenic or carnivore diet. There are first places we should be addressing, looking at a vitamin deficiency. How many people are deficient in vitamins? And that could be the cause of their depression. There are other places to start first. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time and the emotional energy and physical energy to be here today.
Yeah. Yeah, for you to be here and to be able to do that, it's amazing. It truly is. Like you're changing the world with your story, Melissa. Here's the deal: you go in for a brain injury and you come out with a brain injury.
This is what I said to my doctor.
That's what is on my sheet of paper this whole time you're talking. I'm like, the one thing you went in for, you came out with, along with a billion other things, but
a billion times worse. And those are the words that I said in the last appointment before I broke things off with my doctor. I ripped him a new one. This man was so red. You can't imagine how I left this man. But I told him, I walked into your office with a structural brain injury, and I walked out with a synthetic brain injury a billion times worse. And I want you to remember that. Go to sleep with that. Dream about it. I want you to remember that.
I want you to dream about me.
I'll taunt you.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Gaslit Truth Podcast. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. And what was your handle one more time on TikTok so people
The Face of Mal.
The Face of Mal, MAL. So
MAL.
follow her story, follow her journey, and make sure you like and follow us at the same time. Send us your Gaslit Truth stories at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com. And that is a wrap.